All right, guys and gals, we are moving on. So I've got all of my sides and the front. I've got it all pretty much primered. I think I've got at least 5 or 6 coats of the primer on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Total Boat. I'm going to use their penetrating epoxy. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Penetrating epoxy. I've been mixing this for a few minutes now.
It's a 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, 2-to-1. So I've got 2 ounces of the epoxy and 1 ounce of hardener in here. They've got these really cool little pre-measured cup things. And so I'm going to, ooh, that's a nice grain in that. So I am going to, rather than pouring this stuff on.
It's pretty thin.
It's really thin, yeah. So I'm just going to, literally what I want to do with this this MDF, it soaks in really bad. It's very famous for soaking in. So what I want to do is I want to just make sure that the edges are completely sealed up. So that is what my...
The penetrating epoxy goes in there without all the bubbles and everything else.
Yeah, there's like 0 bubbles.
And then it kind of fills in those gaps, and then...
That's what we're hoping for, because I poured...
You can see, if hold it still. No, hold it still, back the way it was. Yeah. I don't want to get too much glare. You can see where it's soaking in.
Yeah.
Already.
And that's what we're hoping for, is that this will seal this stuff up, so that when I pour my regular...
Say I'm a mess.
Huh?
And you say I'm messy.
Well, I'm not flinging it all over the walls yet. But you can see it's definitely soaking in. So I'm hoping this 3 ounces is enough. But I don't have to worry about it on the surface too much. It's the edges where this MDF really is like a sponge. And that's what I'm hoping to seal up, so that when I pour my regular epoxy on, that it's all sealed up. So guys, I'm going to go ahead, you guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this off camera, because it'll take me a little bit, and you guys can see what I'm doing here. All right, folks, we're back. So what we've done here, let's kind of go over what we've done so far. We've got our pieces cut out, and yesterday I put the penetrating epoxy on. That's the 2-part penetrating, it's 2-to-1, 2-part penetrating epoxy. And it sealed up the edges really good. You can see it's kind of splotchy on the surface, but I don't think that's really going to matter too much, because we're going to do a flood pour. So I'm done with the penetrating epoxy. I'll get that out of the way. Now what I'm going to use is the high performance 2-to-1 epoxy that I've used. I've used this on several different signs. So this is what I'm going to use for the next one. But rather than using the pumps, I'm going to use, because I need so much, rather than that, I'm just going to do a 2-to-1 pour, 2-to-1 mix. And I've got the regular epoxy resin. I've got already in here 8 ounces. And what I'm going to do now is add 4 ounces of the hardener. And then I'm going to mix that up for 3 or 4 minutes. So I need to kind of get a look at where my marks are here.
It's probably going to be a lot more than you need, but the way it is bumpy like that, it's better to have more, I feel.
So now I'm going to bring it up to 12 ounces, which will give me a 2-to-1 ratio, theoretically, since I started with 8 ounces of the epoxy. And now... And I have had this in front of the heater for a few hours. All right, so now we've got 12 ounces total in there. And I am going to mix this for a few minutes. Vicky is setting the timer. Doesn't seem to be a lot of bubbles in here so far, which is a good sign. So we're going to turn the camera off, and we'll be back in a couple minutes when this is all mixed. All right, so I've been mixing for about 4 or 5 minutes. I just added some black to the resin, and I don't think it's enough. I added about that much, and Vicky's adding some more for me.
Take the camera again, I'll burn it.
Oh, it's really thin.
All right.
Doesn't pour too well from this
Ooh,
thing,
it's
does it?
warm though. I'm gonna pour some more on here so we can get the edges. You got plenty there, so
Oh, it's really warm.
yeah, that means it's probably gonna set up pretty fast. But sorry for my arm, you guys, being in the way there. You need to pour more on there. Over here too.
I'm gonna have to pick some up off the.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you've got plenty. But we need so much. Ready?
Yeah, sure.
Stand back. Alright. I don't know if that'll show up, but man, that looks sharp.
Yeah, it has like a smoky, marbled look to it, which I kind of like. Okay, guys, cleanup time. So we'll probably be dealing with this for the next half hour or so. I'm gonna get this covered, put a cover over the top of it for anything that's flying around in the air, try and keep all of the particles off of it. And when we come back, hopefully this will be done and we'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so let's move on to the second sign. As I may have mentioned before, can't remember for sure, but we have 2 signs I'm doing for Josh. The one is the J and the M. You guys have seen that. This is a second sign. Jake, and I talked to Jake and Josh both on a conference call. Jake is the one that reached out to me. He represents Josh. Anyway, he has a certain font that he wanted. This is Grotter's font. And the interesting thing about this font, if you go and look that up, it doesn't have any numbers. So Vicky just went and found a set of numbers that kind of matched it a little bit. It's called, or came close to it, that's called permanent marker. So this is Grotter's font, these 2, and that's permanent marker, in case you want to know. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut these all black inset, and I'm doing it on a piece of that cherry. Here's how the layout came out. I just used my transfer process, my inkjet transfer process, and I'll put across the screen here, if you want to know what that process is about, I'll put across the screen here, you can go check out how that was done. But then I just used a Sharpie and kind of marked around the outside of the edges because the transfer didn't give me a real defined look. So I just kind of touched it up with a Sharpie. All right, I have got my little rigid router, and I've got my 60-degree V-groove, and it's set at about 3/16. Yeah, just right at 3/16. I don't know, I think that's going to be about right. Let's get to carving and see how it looks. Okay, so there it is. So let me explain. Oh gosh, I've got a little bit to take out there.
I was wondering which.
That looks like the only piece that's left over in there. Well, I'll take that out real quick. Hang with me. So anyway, as I was saying, I was set pretty much 3/16, but then I backed it off a little bit because it was a little too deep. But if you go back and watch that, even though I'm going to speed up the video some, if you go back and watch it, you'll see that many times when it came down into spots like this or this where I wanted it to be a little bit narrower, I lifted the router base. So this is one of those times where this has multiple depths to it, but it started at 3/16 or just a little less than that. But again, it will depend on what bit you're using. This is my standard 60-degree bit. All right, guys, so what I'm going to do is we'll come back and we'll get this thing sprayed, sand it off, and we'll finish it up. All right, guys, so I'm using my primer. This is my kind of standard go-to these days. In case I didn't say, this is a piece of that cherry that I got a long time ago, I don't know, a year or so ago. It's part of a load of stuff that I got that it had a bunch of cabinetry kind of pieces, and this was originally was a drawer front for something. Anyway, and this is cherry, and really carves really nice. I don't want to. I'm going to let that dry for a minute.
I can just get over the top of it if you want to just do it that way.
Well, then let's set it up. I want to put kind of an angle to it. Don't forget, guys, you definitely want to. Yeah, I can do it that way. I just didn't want to touch those edges. You definitely want to brush that thing out with a stiff bristle brush. This particular font, because almost everything is gone, doesn't really have much texture in the background. Not quite that important. This, by the way, is I've never found that I really needed to use sanding sealer with this cherry, so I'm not too worried about that. Okay, we're going to let that set. We'll come back and sand it off. Do the reveal, see what it looks like. Now let's throw some clear on it. So I'm just going to use my Krylon Crystal Clear. I'll just stand it up real quick. This is only going interior, so that's the reason I'm just using my normal interior finish. Not normally, but oh well. No big deal, it's an old mat. So there it is, guys. I really like this this cherry. It carves very consistent. It's hard. It's kind of tough on the bits, and it's hard, but it carves really, really nice. It looks terrific with a finish on it. So I'll probably end up putting 3 or 4 more coats on there. It'll dry pretty fast on a day like today. I'll come back and we will show both the JM and this when it's all finished all together, and see what it looks like. So stick with us, guys. We'll be right back. All right, folks, that is it. We got this stuff all done. So let's go over a little bit. Here is my JM, and I really like the way this black ended up being kind of smoky colored. It has kind of a marbled, silver black marbled on it, and the edge, that penetrating, that Total Boat penetrating epoxy worked really tremendous on this MDF. I'm just super happy with. So I would strongly suggest, guys, that if you're going to do resin on MDF, get some of that penetrating epoxy. That stuff really. Now I did prime it first, but that penetrating epoxy made a huge difference. If you go back and watch the Sasha pour that I did, I think I had to pour it 3 or 4 times, but this was just one pour with the penetrating epoxy first, and then a final pour of my flood coat. But I'm super happy with the way these things came out. Now here's, huh?
Hold them up again.
So here's what I did. I want to show you what I did for Josh, for him hanging these things. What I did is actually cut a keyhole in the back. So I used my keyhole cutter in my router and cut a keyhole in the back, so it should make it nice and easy for Josh to hang these up. So got a keyhole in there, and then one in here, and then the Josh Martin 95 sign. I'm really happy with the way it came out. This is a piece of that cherry drawer front that I had from a big load of stuff that I got, but I love carving this cherry, and again, that's got the keyhole in the back as well, so it should make it really easy for him to hang these wherever he wants to on his wall. So a big thank you again to Jake and to Josh. Thanks, guys, for so much for trusting in me. I hope you like this stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to subscribe. Click that little bell icon so you get notified when we do 4 videos a week. If you need some supplies, there's the website. And give us a thumbs up, share this video, and if you have any questions, email me directly, eric@makeawoodsign.com, and I'm on Instagram every day, makeawoodsign, and we got more stuff coming, so stay tuned, and thanks, guys. We love you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.